Hi, welcome to Off the Shelf. I'm Veronica Andrews, your host. We have a very accomplished young lady with us today, Donna Thorland, and her book is The Turncoat, Renegades of the Revolution. Now, you've done just about everything, and then you decided to write your first novel, and it's first fiction, historical fiction.
Yeah.
And it's proved to be quite a good effort, didn't it?
Yeah, a lot of fun too.
Yes. Well, as long as you have fun, that's the important
Yes.
thing. Yes. But American Revolution is a hard thing to write about.
Yeah, it really is.
Lots of research.
Lots of research. Some of it, knowledge I already had because my first career among many was as a public historian at the Peabody Essex Museum next door in Salem. So I knew a lot about 18th century America, daily life, 18th century American cooking technology, decorative arts, but less about the mid-Atlantic states, New Jersey, Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're not as important as we are.
Right, exactly.
I mean, this is where the kettle started stirring, right?
Exactly.
Right. And what made you choose this particular cast of characters? And I must tell you, you did an excellent job in making each one a specific personality.
Thank you.
With their own quirks and traits and ingenuity, getting in and out of mischievous. Sometimes when there's as many characters as there are, I have to go back and see which one you're talking about. No, they each maintain their own identity throughout the book. Do you keep a chart, like a chessboard? This one's here, and I'm going to move them here and there. How do you ever keep it straight in your mind?
I don't, but that's actually a good idea. I got very interested in two historical characters. Lydia Barrington Darrah, who was a Quaker matron living in Philadelphia during the British occupation, who had soldiers quartered in her house or using one of the rooms in her house as a meeting room. And she overheard a British plan for a sneak attack on Washington and decided to walk 12 miles in December to warn the Continentals. So Lydia, I knew I wanted to fictionalize and make her the heroine of my story, and I also became really interested in a woman who's known only as the widow of Mount Holly, who we don't know her real name, but when Carl Donop should have been at Trenton with his Hessians, he was in Mount Holly, beguiled by the beautiful widow who kept him there for 3 crucial days, and Washington was able to...
She was my kind of lady.
Yes, she's a great character. Obviously, we don't know that much about her, so it gave me a lot of opportunity to
But even that is part of her mystique.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the fun thing about writing a book about 2 women during the Revolution is I grew up on Washington's retreat route in northern New Jersey. So I always found the Revolution really compelling because it was full of drama. You know, the darkest days of the Revolution took place there. And there used to be a cinema in the town that I grew up in that had a mural, an old-fashioned one-screen theater with a curtain and everything, and a mural over the proscenium of Washington crossing the Delaware. And I would watch these Saturday afternoon matinees there, and you'd see, you know, Errol Flynn swashbuckling underneath this image of Washington crossing the Delaware. So the two were kind of connected in my mind, and the thing that I always wondered was, where were all the women in this?
Busy.
Yes, busy.
Yes.
But also doing exciting things, I think.
And I think a lot of people don't know how many women followed their men to war with their babies, and they cooked and cleaned and they took care of their wounded and their ill while they were there just so they could be with their husbands.
Absolutely, yeah.
We have women today who won't follow their husbands to the grocery store. They'd use their cell phone to ask what size peas. How long did it take you to write it from beginning to end?
It's a tough question because I was doing other things at the time. I had left the Peabody Essex Museum, gone to film school at USC in Southern California, and I had started on a career as a television writer. So I was writing this in my spare time for fun.
Well, at least you had an outlet. That's probably why it was so good.
Maybe.
Because you looked forward to doing it and enjoyed it. If it's hard work, I don't think it would have come to as good a fruition.
Yeah, if writing is a chore, then you're doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm. What did you want to be when you grew up?
A writer.
So you did everything to get there.
With a lot of stops along the way. I was really fortunate when I worked at the Peabody Essex. My job was manager of interpretation and the historic house programs, and I had a wonderful boss there.
Which you did a very good job, by the way. I've enjoyed
you.
both.
I had a wonderful time there, but I was working for a guy named Rick Gutenberg, and he had this really expansive vision of what museum education could be, and he really encouraged me to develop a program that they no longer do, but it was called Eerie Events, and it was ghost stories in historic houses. And they closed off the old Essex campus, which was a city block of 17th, 18th, and 19th century houses. And they basically created an environment where for 6 nights every October, you could walk in those gates and enter different houses and hear ghost stories that I was writing and directing, told by costumed actors in character. So you had the thrill of listening to a ghost story that was connected to the environment you were sitting in.
I'm sorry, I missed that one.
It was a really wonderful program. They do a small version of it now at the Witch House in Salem that the city operates. And it's a tiny program, and you have to book early because they sell out. But it's really wonderful. It's like a little Jewel-like version of what we used to do.
I have a family in Salem. I will tell them to look for it.
They should. It's so good. I go every year.
When it finally got published, elated when you saw it, when you held it in your hand?
Elated, but also a lot of work to do, because I think that people tend to think that a book about the American Revolution is going to be dull. And they've been trained from history class to say, oh, I already know how this all comes out.
Yeah, but that's because they teach history dull. If they put this in school, they'd read it from cover to cover.
They do teach history dull. I think one of the more exciting things, if you're a historian, about the research that is available now is that we know a lot more about economics and social trends and forces that were at work on characters in history. And the Peabody Essex interpreted the witchcraft trials, and one of the great things that we had at our disposal was recent research that told us things like how many families had to split their farms up into smaller and smaller subsistence level farms, and how it was the coldest winter on record, and how firewood was collected and distributed. All these things were forces at work on personalities, but I think we make the mistake sometimes of teaching the forces at work and skipping the personalities. And it makes history dull because no one comes to Salem to find out about economic forces. They come to hear stories about people and what those people did in the face of adversity. And I think that's what historical fiction can give back to us in history, which we sometimes lose in teaching
And
it.
what is that quote? If you don't respect history and learn from it, you're going to repeat
You're
it.
doomed to repeat it, yeah.
But isn't that the truth? In an economic downturn, you see people giving up all the extra eccentricities that they just can't live without, and they find out that they can.
Yeah.
And they're usually better off for it when they come out of the gutter and reestablish themselves in their credit. They've learned something that they didn't learn along the way.
Yeah.
I thought Lydia going from Quaker clothing to high society in Philadelphia was a nice transition, but I loved that she knew how to sew and how she knew how to make something from nothing. And she always kept her wits about her, and I think that's something you would learn on a farm, having to do with what you had, so that as she stood in awe of all that was going on, she didn't lose her cool.
No, and I am fascinated by 18th century clothing. I don't reenact myself, but I know a lot of reenactors, and I am just in awe of their ability, especially to do all of this hand sewing, because we're so spoiled with sewing machines, and we don't think, you could run off one of these 18th century gowns in a day with a sewing machine.
And they did it with little stitches.
And when we shot a trailer for the book, we had reenactors from Gardner's Regiment.
I saw that. It's beautiful.
They were
done.
lovely to come out and help us. And one of the things that was amazing was seeing people who had these completely hand-stitched gowns that they'd made themselves from the bottom up. And those are just, they're handmade works of art. And a lot of the clothing of the period is more varied and more interesting, I think, than what we get usually in movies or
There are
books.
some things they wouldn't even try. I have apparently a seal coat embellished with black onyx. It's 115 years old. And I can't sew it. I can't get a needle and thread through it.
To go through.
Right. And we thought at first it was beaver. No, it's not hairy enough, so it has to be sealed. So when you consider it's 115 years old and I can't get a needle through it, you couldn't find a piece of material today. So if I can't, how
Yeah,
the devil did they?
a
A
lot of work.
bone needle and a knife to make the hole to put the needle through, yeah?
Oh God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's still lasting. Now, you have another book coming out
I
in
do.
2014?
I do. There's an excerpt in the back of the Turncoat, which the excerpt is titled Terms of Engagement. The title has changed to The Rebel Pirate.
Oh, okay. That confused me because I thought it was terms of endearment. I thought people would identify.
Yeah, that's why we changed the title.
Yes, not you are.
It's a book about privateers in Boston Harbor in 1775, so it's a little bit earlier than the Turncoat. There are some characters from the Turncoat who will make an appearance in the
nice.
book, but it's, again, really fun because it's a corner of the Revolution that hasn't been fully explored in fiction.
Most people didn't realize we didn't have a navy.
Exactly.
That the pirates were free to do anything they wanted to do as long as they didn't get caught. And then when they get caught, it was their fault.
Yeah.
And they were in big trouble.
So it's a high stakes situation. And it's a lot of fun to write something.
Now, do you think you'll always stay in the American Revolution? You're so diversified. I expect to see NASA in a space lab, 5 years down the road.
No NASA, but I am doing an urban fantasy series for Pocket Star Books, which is going to come out also next spring, and it's set in Boston. And the premise is that Irish gangs in South Boston and Charlestown are really warring clans of Fae or She, and so it's got a lot of Irish mythology and urban fantasy and action, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And it's coming out under my maiden name, which is McDermott. So
nice.
yes, it's a transparent pen name. It's just a different brand. People will be able to find it. I used to go by Donna McDermott Thorland, and then I gave up on wedging that onto airplane tickets. So they don't like that. American couldn't contend with my full name.
Isn't that too bad? Did you enjoy writing this one? Were you more relaxed or more uptight knowing how they scrutinized this one?
It's always fun to pick up a new topic and research it. I think that's part of my experience at the PEM was that we often at that time, I think they do more now, we're doing 6 exhibits a year, and when you manage interpretation, you are translating curator into English for the public, and you're scrutinizing the gallery guides and the labels, so you became an expert in some new subject about every 2 months, and so that's the fun thing about starting
Right,
a new
and
book.
it always leads you down to a path that you want to continue to investigate, but you got to finish what you're doing over here.
Exactly.
How much research material do you have in your house?
We, for a long time, lived in Boston in a very tiny place, and I limited my book consumption, I thought, anyway. But then we just moved back to Salem with some ludicrous number of books, and yeah, there's too much stuff
Can
in
you
our
part
house.
with them?
No, of course not.
I cannot part with a book. We were discussing lining them up last night like a 2x4 so that it would support the second floor instead of using lumber.
Well, that's useful. Yeah.
I love George Gloss has this bathroom, and the walls are nothing but books. So they took the wall, as we would know it, the blue board out, and they made the bookcases in the bathroom. So the bathroom is lined with all these first editions, and that's my dream. And I often wonder why people don't do that, because it's perfect insulation.
That's true. I could build a whole separate house probably out of mine.
Right, but I mean, you have a great big living room that's 9 by 12, right? And you hang pictures on the wall. Well, look at all the wall space that you could tuck books into, and it'd be extra insulation for the house. When you turn a book in, do you find that they critique you with great difficulty? Are you such a scholar and a student with all your accomplishments that they don't do much to...
They do a lot of fact-checking, which is nice, because every once in a while you worry and you think, do I have a character in a location at a time when they couldn't possibly be? So it's reassuring that they do scrutinize the book, and it's nice that someone I have a great editor, and she reads for consistency and character, and she'll have questions that I'll think, oh, well, that would enrich the book if I could answer that. So I think a good editor is invaluable.
Worth their weight in gold.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, it didn't come out in hardcover?
No, it's a trade paperback original. There's a hardcover that is a large print edition that you can get either through book clubs or just online.
That's
but
good to know.
The first publication was trade paperback and ebook and all of those other formats, of course.
Now, which format do you like to read?
I still prefer a paper book, and
Tactile.
it's something I'm trying to wean myself off of because I accumulate research books and they have to be paper because I want more than one open in front of me. I'm trying to read more fiction on Kindle and Nook just to cut down on the potential for books replacing walls in my house.
Who do you like to read?
I read a lot of different contemporary authors. William Martin.
He was here twice. Isn't he a delight?
He is awesome.
Yes.
I am a huge fan of, in historical fiction, Dorothy Dunnett was my all-time favorite author. I do a reread of the Lyman Chronicles probably every year to every other year.
And you like Nancy Drew.
I love Nancy Drew with a passion. And I also really love George MacDonald Fraser's Flashman series, and also some of his nonfiction and his humor stories are really terrific. And also get an annual reread in our house.
Well, but that's a nice eclectic menu.
They're
so
fun
you don't
authors.
stay in the same place, which sometimes can be detrimental to you.
I think that you can draw on a lot of different genres and enrich your work by bringing in things that people don't conventionally think belong in it. I have a real weakness for swashbucklers, and I think that my work is inflected by having read a huge amount of Sabatini and Dumas and wanting to put some of that Saturday afternoon matinee spirit into the book.
If I'd known that, I would have worn my pirate hat.
Well, the next book has pirates, so for the next
well,
book,
all right. Will you
pirate
come
hat.
back for the next one?
Oh, absolutely.
And
absolutely.
it's a great big black with the red feather, and just dying to. And now you don't like to reenact or dress up. I don't reenact, but I do love the costumes.
I do love the costumes. I don't reenact because I don't right now have the time to put together a character and clothing, but it's something that eventually, when I have the time, I'd really like to do. But I respect the seriousness with which people who do it take it until I have that kind of time.
I actually wear the 115-year-old coat when I'm Miss McGonagall from Harry Potter.
That is terrific.
And it works. It's absolutely.
I bet it's very warm, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially in a library. Yeah, and you don't get out of it. I think it's a size 12, and I'm not. When you sign your contract for the book, can you decide whether it goes electronic or paperback or hardcover? And I ask because I see that Stephen King just recently, his latest book, he will not let it go to ebook.
Oh, that's interesting. I wanted the book to be in as many formats as possible, and I think that there are all kinds of decisions made on the publisher level about what the format that's going to appeal to people most is. I'm actually really glad it's a trade paperback because they are substantial and they are tactile, but they don't have
easier to handle than
they don't have the heft of a hardcover. And I tried to remember the last time I bought a brand new hardcover and was willing to lug it on the train or the plane since I do a lot of travel. And I thought, no,
and I love them, and I'm glad that they last forever. But
yes,
the paper book is. As a matter of fact, Mr. Martin's, I was reading, and it had such a gold foil cover. I didn't get to read it because everybody would go, "Oh," and I'd be engaged in conversation with people about the book when I was trying to read it. So I finally took the cover off and read it without the
stealthy,
without the jacket, so that I could finish it before the interview. Will the same publisher do the new book?
Yeah, it's also Penguin New American Library, and there'll be a consistency to the cover and the titling, which is nice. I've seen the cover. I can't show it yet because it's not done, but it's really nifty. So
we have a lot of books come in where the author is doing a photograph, their own photograph
Oh, wow.
is
Okay.
the cover. I thought that was interesting.
Our cover for the Turncoat actually has some photography elements of mine in it because they decided to use the Shirley Eustace house in Roxbury, which is where we shot the trailer, as the background on the cover. So you can actually see it a little bit to the left of the heroine.
Excellent.
Yeah, terrific historic house. Really worth a trip if you're out in Roxbury. It's amazing.
Well, there's so many there. The African American
Yes.
Museum, is it, that it just got restored?
There's a lot right in that little area. Shirley Eustace, I think, unfortunately suffers by being off the beaten track in terms of Revolutionary War tourism. We all think the Freedom Trail. I'm on it. I'll see everything I want to see in Boston. Everything there is to see, and you think, no, actually, there's a lot you're missing if you don't get off this.
Because they had to go through all these other communities and live
Yes.
other places to get there. The half an hour is over.
Oh my goodness.
We went through the American Revolution just
Like
like
that.
that.
Well, that was easy.
Yeah, too bad they didn't have as good a time. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
We would look forward to seeing you when the new book comes out. When, next year, March?
March, yeah.
Well, can we reserve a space for you so we
Oh,
can
yes, of course.
tell the world
The
all
Rebel
about it?
Pirate. We will talk
Rebel
about
Pirate.
the Rebel Pirate.
And the Turncoat was most interesting. A good read, and you said you can't put it down. But I did enjoy putting it down because when life slowed down, I had a place to go and hide.
Excellent.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done. And I will look forward to the next book. That's it. Off the Shelf, Books on Tour. Thank you for being with us.